Okay, great. Looks like we got a pretty good group, so I think we can go ahead and get started. So just wanted to introduce myself real quick. My name is Ben Dimmick. I'm one of the consultants over here at Tevora, and I specialize in our solution space. So a lot of our integration work, a lot of our implementation services, a lot of the work that we do around the method that things are implemented, as well as we have a number of specialized assessments that fall under my space. So that's a quick blurb about me and who I am. But today we're really taking a quick look at what's going on with security information and how it's being handled. And one of the reasons that we have been, that this is coming up this year and keeps being a bit of a recurring theme for us, is we've been looking at what's really going on in the world in terms of information security. And we're noticing a few trends. For instance, last year, 2015, according to one report, 76% of organizations acknowledged a breach. So I will first off put this out there and just say that we acknowledge that the definition of a breach tends to be pretty variable. For instance, in a lot of these statistics, a breach would be anything that would include even like a lost laptop or cell phone, things like that. But that's still a pretty staggering number. Three out of 4 organizations are having something that is currently being characterized as a breach. So I think it's safe to say that there's a problem. But even more telling, and this number goes up every year, but even more telling was another statistic, which is that 62% of IT professionals expect their organization to have a breach this year. So as of the end of last year, most IT professionals are expecting to be breached this year. So that's a major issue. It means that we're essentially starting to lose confidence in our ability to actually handle security events that are occurring. Possibly part of that is just that we're starting to finally buy into the idea that most organizations are experiencing breaches, but I think there's a bigger problem overall. I think we're starting to see that there are cracks in the way that things are being handled currently. So one of the other things that really has brought this topic to the forefront was another recent report looking at security incidents and breaches. Where it gets really interesting is this right here. So out of recent breaches, 54% of those were first discovered by someone who was external to the organization. So almost half of all of the breaches that have been detected are more than half are being discovered by someone outside of the organization before they're discovered by someone within the organization. So that's pretty telling that we are suddenly starting to see so many breaches that are not being detected by our own systems. They're being found out by banks, discovering that there are compromised credit cards in our organizations, or they're being discovered by other folks that are seeing data leaked to the internet or for sale on the black markets. These are the types of things where that's how we're first finding out about these breaches. And additionally, to make things even more staggering, in the same report, they found that if your breach occurred on January 1st, the median time to discover it was 320 days. That means that if your breach occurred on January 1st, you would not have discovered it until November 20th. So that was the median stat. So that if there's someone that had a breach that was 10 years in the making, that wouldn't necessarily throw the curve all the way off. This was right in the middle in terms of the amount of time it took to discover a breach. So the fact that we're going almost an entire year without discovering these breaches is pretty staggering as well. Between the number of breaches that are occurring and the way that these breaches are being discovered, I think it's pretty apparent that on the whole we have a serious problem in the infosec industry right now. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on, why we're having these issues. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, there's a few problems that I'm seeing that seem to be issues all over the place. The first one is that we're in a bit of an arms race, so to speak. We effectively have our black hats out there. We have our bad actors. We have our guys that are trying to infiltrate us, and they're discovering new tools. They're discovering new things every day. They're starting to make use of new things that didn't show up in the past. And as InfoSec professionals, we're struggling to keep up in a lot of cases. On top of that, we're also seeing zero-day attacks occurring with pretty good frequency as well. These are attacks that simply have not been seen in the past, and our traditional methods of discovering the known attacks are not always effective in these cases because they simply are able to fly under the radar. So we're looking at ways to approach those as well. One of the other issues I think that has caused this proliferation is that the attack surface has changed quite a bit. So previously it was relatively straightforward. Everybody knew that the goal was to secure your perimeter, and that as we secured the perimeter, we were going to find that the enterprise on a whole was secure. We're quickly finding out that that's not so much the case anymore. We're quickly learning that there are much more types of ways that our enterprise can be infiltrated, such as most attacks now involve malware initially in some form or other. Whether those are droppers, whether they're phishing attacks, whether it's a drive-by download, we're starting to see that there's a lot more going on, and they're getting around that strong perimeter that we'd put into place. As well as the other issue is just that we're seeing a lot more attackers out there. Now, there is a lot more, I will say there's a lot more unskilled attackers out there, but there's also a lot more skilled attackers that are showing up too. A lot of those unskilled attackers are starting to develop into highly skilled attackers. So we're definitely seeing that there's a lot going on, and it's starting to become a much more complex scenario in terms of trying to protect the enterprise. And I think that's why things are getting worse. But as a result, we're starting to see that we need to take a break from the traditional approach. It's really time to sit down and find something new, find something that is different than we have previously done things. So that's ultimately what we're proposing here. So what I'm looking at here is not a matter of let's get new IPS definitions, let's get new firewall rules, let's get new virus definitions. This is really a matter of what we've been doing all along is not working, because that takes us back to the arms race approach. It takes us back to, if we're just trying to find the best IPS out there, then pretty soon we find ourselves constantly looking for the best IPS, and we're not able to keep up. So this is really about stepping away from that and coming up with something that will work against these zero-day attacks, working against things that have never been seen before, working against things that there are no definitions for because no one's ever seen it, and figuring out how to identify things that do not fit any of our previous definitions of what an attack actually looks like. So we're looking for some new things, and in order to determine what we really should be looking for, I spent a lot of time talking to the guys on our incident response team. I spent a lot of time talking to the guys on our our red team engagements. I could find out what's working for them. Also spend a lot of time analyzing debriefs from a number of different incidents that occurred. And I started to discover a few things that are out there that we can begin using to discover what's really happening, and discover a breach when all of our early warnings and blocks would otherwise fail us. The first one is that post-exploitation. So essentially, once someone has initially executed an attack, they're going to try to do additional things to try to gain additional access. For instance, it doesn't always do a lot of good to get access to a web server. You usually want to get access to the database server that's behind it, or the authentication server that it's talking to, or some other system within the enterprise. So this can fall under trying to escalate privileges. Maybe they have a regular user and they're trying to get an admin user. Maybe they're just trying to pivot to other systems, but it falls under a number of things. So if we aren't able to detect the exploitation itself, we can usually detect the post-exploitation activities. The other thing that we're looking for here is data exfiltration. So once we have gotten in, eventually there's going to be data going out. So if we can detect that data is starting to go out, then that can do an awful lot for us in detecting who's potentially compromised and what's going on. So we can plug that up quickly. From there, user behavior anomalies. So ideally, this will be things like users logging in from unusual places, things like that, things that are changes in their routines. And I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a moment. But this has been extremely useful in discovering a lot of compromises so far. And this is definitely something to pay attention to in the immediate future as well. Beaconing activities. So going back to the whole scourge of malware within the enterprise, this is a very common practice for malware. Once a dropper is established, once a payload has infiltrated the enterprise, then that payload will begin beaconing back out to its home server to get instructions and to allow the attacker to begin actually attacking and getting use out of it. So if we can detect this activity, this will make things much more simple. And then along the same lines, in terms of malware, really having the way to detect this the advanced malware that's out there, really finding out everything that is occurring. If we can find that stuff that our AV will be blind to, then that will help quite a bit. Talking to our red team guys, they're constantly looking for malware that won't get picked up by AV because they know that they can use that in order to really get some good access out there. So go into just a little bit more detail on some of these things and what they look like. In terms of post-exploitation, these are just some of the biggest indicators that we're starting to see that we can look for to tell us that post-exploitation is occurring. One of the things that our guys will commonly do is they'll start to use WMI and PSExec to try to gain access to other systems. These are protocols that we can commonly execute from one Windows system to another that we can attempt to do even when we don't have a foothold in that new system. So these are commonly used for trying to pivot from one system to another. PowerShell activity. We should start looking at PowerShell commands that show up. What's actually occurring? And one of the biggest indicators is if for some reason the contents of that PowerShell activity is base64 encoded. By encoding it with base64, there's a lot of detection systems out there that can be fooled. So they're starting to do that quite a bit. Scheduled tasks, startup tasks, script executions, anything like that can show that there's been changes on the system that help to maintain control. And other types of anomalous security events, excessive number of login attempts, things like that. These are all pretty common indicators that there's something serious going on. Now, so our next category for data exfiltration, normally what this will end up looking like is we'll see a lot of large data transfers. We'll also see unsanctioned transfer sites. So suddenly we have a bunch of users using Dropbox or using Pastebin, using something that we don't actually use within the enterprise for business purposes. Sensitive data transfers. So a lot of this particular point goes back pretty heavily to DLP, but that can also be a great indicator that something is taking place when a user that has not had any DLP violations for quite a long time suddenly has several. And then swells in database read volume. So if I have an exploit that allows me to begin getting data from a database, then usually there will be quite a bit of a shift in terms of database access rates. So now this is one of the biggest ones that we're seeing is user behavioral anomalies. This is stuff that's going on that our users don't normally do, such as new login destinations. Maybe we have an admin who manages all of our Windows servers, but he has access to the Linux servers. Well, suddenly he starts logging into the Linux servers that he's never logged into before. That can be a good indication that his account has been compromised. New geographic sources. We're suddenly getting VPNs from for one of our users from Romania or from China, someplace where our user doesn't go. That can be pretty indicative that there's something going on in that case as well. concurrent geographic sources. So, for instance, maybe our user is logged in here in the office. We know that, but for some reason we're also getting a VPN connection from them from some other place. That should throw up a big red flag. And then changes in data access behavior. So again, same thing as before, where we're logging in new servers. Well, maybe we're accessing data that we haven't used in the past. Beaconing. So there's definitely not as much information on beaconing itself, but generally it will occur on a lot of different ports. It's a little bit harder to detect because it can be a little bit less well known. But it's generally categorized by just having very regular connections being initiated. And then advanced malware. This one is also a little bit more complex because we definitely need some type of a tool. We have to have an analysis engine that can go out there and do it. It does usually require that we have a little bit more of a proactive approach because, frankly speaking, most of the solutions out there do not have a system currently for initiating active blocking. So definitely requires a little bit of work on our part. And then one of the big things to look for too is that make sure that whatever we're doing, it's a sandboxing solution, a whitelisting solution, or execution analysis. We want to get away from the traditional AV, things like hash matching and heuristics, because those can be pretty easily fooled by a lot of the malware authors that are out there. So let's get down to it. Now that we kind of know what we're looking for and what a new attack actually looks like. And by the way, this is what almost all attacks will end up including is some of these things. Let's look at how we can respond to it. First thing that we have to do is we have to be able to identify that something is taking place. This requires us to have something on the line that is seeing this particular traffic, that's seeing this particular event. And there's pretty much always something there. There's always something out there that is observing that this takes place. We have to be able to record that this has occurred. So in order to do that, we have to have logging. We have to have something in place that is that's saving what's happening, and then we have to be able to categorize all this information so we can start to realize what's actually important. Then we need to sit down. We need to evaluate this stuff, figure out what's actually dangerous traffic versus what is benign traffic. We need to begin correlating some of these events together. So what's actually occurring on the back end? How are we? What else was going on at the time? It helps quite a bit to centralize this information together into one big place. And then we need to begin alerting our staff that this stuff is taking place. It doesn't do much good for it to go into a dashboard and go into a report, and no one's going to look at it in a week, and it's going to sit there, which takes us to our next step, which is to respond. And in order to have a successful response, we first off we need to require that there's acknowledgement going on. We need to require that somebody is actually seeing this event and has actually reviewed the contents of it. Once we have sat down, done the review, then there has to be some type of a response. So this takes us through the initial part of things. We're able to begin identifying that there is threatening traffic out there. We have to be able to evaluate the traffic to determine what the threat is and what the actual implications are, and then we have to have a response to that information. Once we have all of this, the next step is to begin evolving the process. We continually want to begin improving on what we're seeing. So this is kind of in a nutshell what we've been doing to try to improve the handling of security events that we're seeing out there. But one of the most important thing is the validation process, and this is what we're starting to implement with a lot of our clients, so they can better handle security events and figure out how they're actually going to be able to respond to these things. So the first step that we start with is we start with testing. We'll sit down. We will actually begin by simulating some of these events and generating some information that they should be observing within their enterprise. Now, this is very different from a pen test or a red team exercise because we are not actually trying to exploit the environment. We're not trying to detect vulnerabilities. We're really just looking to simulate the activity that would occur after an exploit has already been executed. So we're going to be generating some of these post-exploitation events that we had seen before. We're going to show what it's like to exfiltrate data. And based on that, we're then going to begin evaluating how well that was received. Once the testing is done, we sit down, we really look at it and say, okay, what was identified? what are we actually able to find a record of? Can we find a record that we downloaded this malware somewhere? Can we find a record that that this beaconing activity took place? Can we find a record somewhere? Usually this will be in the form of a firewall log or some type of a log somewhere. From that, the next step is, how did we analyze that event? Now that we have a record of it somewhere, did we have somewhere that we began to determine if this event was dangerous or if this was a benign event? And then the third step to it is, how did we respond to that? Did we respond by removing the system from the network that seems to be infected with malware? Did we respond by just checking the box that we read the alert? So that's our third step in the evaluation step. And then the third step overall is to sit down and plan. What we'll usually do is we'll sit down and we'll create a roadmap for future improvements. Maybe we scored at this level with our current implementation, but with our we ultimately want to score at this level. So this is what the plan will come down to, and then we'll determine what we need to do in order to fill in some of those gaps and to improve things overall. And we've also determined that there is a number of tools that are very critical to being able to actually have a proactive approach in the current landscape. One of those is having a next-gen endpoint. So when I say a next-gen endpoint, this isn't really getting at. Sorry, Steve. I got a quick question. Audio issues. Are you guys able to hear me? Okay. A little bit late for that question, I suppose, but okay, great. So so for next-gen endpoint, again, we're not looking at every single thing that is out there. We're not necessarily going to be looking for every single. Excuse me, sorry about that technical problem. We're definitely not looking for like antivirus that's showing up. We're not looking for that sort of activity. We're really looking for new types of threats. Looking for things that are looking at behaviors and not just the standard AV issues that are showing up. Additionally, having a SIM is very important. Being able to actually be able to correlate these events together is really crucial to be able to identify that there's an attack that's taking place, as well as be able to retain all of the logs that we need. User behavioral analytics. So again, we talked about the user behavior anomalies. Well, having a user behavioral analytics engine on the back end can help us to identify those pretty quickly, so that we can actually begin addressing those. And SSL decryption. So this is something that a large number of enterprises are not yet taking advantage of, and it's starting to become a bigger issue. I'm kind of surprised it's not getting more attention than it currently is. There are, with current estimates, they say that something like the majority of malware, I want to say something in the range of 65 to 70% of malware now is using SSL for its communication back to command and control servers. So what that means is if we're doing network-based detection for those types of attacks, if we're trying to do network-based detection for things like data exfiltration, then we're going to be blind that these things are occurring. So definitely something that we need to take a look at and begin addressing. Additionally, having a solid IDS IPS in place. So really getting out there, detecting some of these events. Now, this is not going to detect everything that's out there in terms of next gen issues. There's still going to be a lot of things out there that are not going to be detected, but this will allow us to begin detecting some of the low-hanging fruit that is out there and begin addressing those issues. And then, of course, the last thing is advanced malware detection. Now, this can go hand in hand with our next-gen endpoint, but it's pretty crucial that we're able to detect some of the more advanced stuff out there that traditional AV is not going to be addressing. This is becoming a more and more important thing overall. So with that, I will turn it back over. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. Looks like I got a couple already. What's the approach for remote hosts? Okay, great. So yeah, so if you have a very mobile workforce, you got a lot of folks out there that are on the road quite a bit. You've got people that are not there. Again, this is part of that whole we can't protect the perimeter like we used to issue. Well, there's a lot of different cloud-based solutions out there on the endpoint that we can use to keep everything safe. Such as, I mean, for instance, we've seen CrowdStrike used quite a bit. We've seen Sentinel-1 in a lot of deployments. Even Carbon Black is starting to go in that direction. So there's a lot out there that you can do on the endpoint option. The other thing we can do as well is always-on VPN is an option too for some clients. So we can definitely take that approach. Are there ways to automate the process? Yeah. So the whole responding to alerts. There's a number of things out there that can assist, such as Phantom is a great option. It allows us to automatically generate responses and rules to security events, as long as you have everything correlated into a SIM, like with Elastic or something like that. What is the best way to perform testing? As you mentioned. Okay, yeah. So there's a couple solutions out there like Attack IQ. We perform a number of empirical tests as well. We developed a few proprietary tools, and this is actually an engagement that we do with a number of our clients. Geographically, where are most attacks coming from these days? For commercial enterprises, are they using IP anonymizers? A lot of them are. A lot of them are using anonymizers these days. The locations, actually, you would be surprised. The large number of the events that we are seeing are U.S. based. So doing things like geographically blocking China has been a popular approach for a long time. But that's not really effective these days because either number one, those guys are going to be using Tor to obscure where they're coming from, or they're going to be using a U.S.-based VPN, or they're going to be attacking from a previously infiltrated host here on U.S. soil. So yeah, you'd be surprised the number of attacks that come from the U.S. There's actually a number of very successful groups that are coming from the U.S. and the number of attacks coming from China, or excuse me, from Russia has gone up quite a bit the last couple of years as well. So that makes things a little bit complex. Oh, one follow-up question: how do we handle cloud-based assets? AWS, Office 365. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good question. So one of the crucial approaches here is, well, there's a number of things we can do. Number one, there is a number of cloud-based access brokers that are out there. Those ones can be very useful, like Netscope, Skyfence, things like that. Those can really help to filter some of that out and keep tabs on everything that's occurring there. We actually have started doing particular assessments around these exact infrastructures. So if you have a heavily cloud-based infrastructure environment, so you are running in AWS, you're running in Azure, even if you're just using Office 365, even if you don't know what you're using and you want to discover what's going on, then that's kind of what that assessment has focused on. We've had a number of other clients out there that have had that exact question, and so we've actually developed a whole approach around it. Okay, great. Any other questions? I think that's the end of what I have so far. Okay, great. Well, I think that's all for today. I want to thank all of you guys for coming. I appreciate everybody stopping in, and it's been great talking to you.